Yo! How's it going? I am Jason Constantine. Welcome to the Six Stringers Podcast with my good buddy, Jeff Duncan.
Hi, everybody.
Jeff?
Hi, Jason.
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
I'm okay.
Just okay.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. I don't like the sound of just okay.
I got pulled over today. I didn't get a ticket, but I got pulled over.
We got pulled over today.
Yeah.
What happened?
Nothing. He's made me late being here.
Okay, we're musicians. We're used to being late.
I would have been late either way, but...
All right, so this is the first episode of the Six Stringers Podcast.
Exciting.
It's going to be pretty awesome. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of musical-related stuff. We're going to talk about guitars. We're going to talk about gear. We're going to talk about tone.
The only things that matter in life.
Yes, it's true. These
are
the
guys
only...
like us.
Yes. So, basically, this whole thing got started because me and Jeff spend 4 hours on the phone every day talking about tone and gear.
Yeah, the rabbit hole, as it were.
The constant quest. The quest for fire, we'll call it right now.
The search for the ultimate tone, the ultimate guitar, I guess. What's the ultimate pickup? What's the ultimate stomp box for this, for that? Like, what's the best delay? What's the best cable to use? And, just all this stuff that can drive people nuts, but doesn't drive me nuts. I love it.
Doesn't drive me nuts either. I absolutely love it. Why we talk on the phone for 4 hours.
Yeah.
So we decided to take our ramblings and put them on the internet for everybody to listen to. Why not?
On the interwebs. Slather the interwebs with our opinions.
Yes. Fully expecting totally to get lashed out at for our opinions.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's all opinion. It's all opinion. It's the best opinion, but it's all opinion.
Yeah. We're not always right. We don't know what's best for you. We know what's best for us. We just happen to agree that on the same gear, a lot of it.
Yeah, and if there's anything that anybody who sees this, can get out of it, that's great. And if not, then just proceed with what you're doing.
Pretty much. It's me and Jeff met each other, probably about 5 years ago now?
Something like that.
About 5 years ago at a local show. We started bullshitting. Found out we both had a penchant for good guitar tone and went down the rabbit hole from there.
Yeah, and then ended up making a record.
Yeah, we just Jeff just wrote and recorded his debut solo instrumental guitar record called Wanderlust. I was lucky enough to be the one to record it and mix it and co-produce it along with Jeff.
Which is a funny story because what started was I was bringing over, I still record on a Korg D8, I'm like in the 90s with my home recording thing. It's my sketch pad. And Jason has like the great setup here where we're sitting right now. And I would bring over my CDs for him to put in the Pro Tools and master for me. So I'd have consistent levels and I could listen to my demos of my instrumental music. That was really the whole thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then it just kind of went like, well, what are you going to do with this? I don't know. And so he said, let's do it. And I said, no. No, I said, absolutely, great. And started making it pretty quick.
Yeah, it happened pretty quick. The demos were actually really, really good. And strangely enough, he used the Sansamp DI.
That's all I used for the demos.
It sounded really good, too. The demos sounded great.
That Sansamp pedal, I bought that in the 90s. I can't even remember what year it was, but it was probably mid-90s, something like that. And I just thought it was the best thing ever. And it's one of those things that I bought it back then and thought it was great, but I still think it's great.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool piece of gear. I mean, it's not as advanced as to say like, the I got a Helix and things like that, but for what it was, I mean, for cutting demos and all that stuff, it really sounded really good. I mean, one of my first questions to Jeff was, what did you use for the guitar? They sound pretty good.
Well, I think the Sansamp was the first or one of the first pedals like that that did speaker emulation.
Yeah.
Not trying to necessarily produce an amp model. It was all about how a speaker breaks up.
Yeah.
Although I think that the amp tone in their simulation is pretty cool.
Yeah.
To go for that speaker breaking up sort of sound, I think that was one of the first things that came out that explored that idea.
Yeah.
And I think they nailed it, really.
Yeah, they did a great job.
It still holds up, for demos and stuff. And I've actually used it at a few gigs direct, little sort of gigs or whatever, and it works just fine.
Yeah.
I prefer it over, I've tried other things, but that's still my favorite thing. Although I haven't tried that Helix yet. So.
Well, you played on it for a couple minutes the other night. But
yeah.
This is my new baby right here, my new Helix.
Isn't
Stomp.
Isn't that cute?
Yeah, it's so cute. It's cool. I dig it. Don't get me wrong. I'm a tube amp purist, man. I love my EVH stuff. I love the Friedman stuff. Which, Jeff, you're a bastard. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love real amps, man. I've been chasing tone my whole life, and chasing the same thing everybody else. That elusive, brown sound kind of thing. Just that super tight, overdriven Marshall, squishy. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, the quest to never be satisfied.
Nope, it is. That's precisely what it is. And there's always something new coming out. That's got a better version of just when you think you got the thing. It's like, yeah, I got this all set up and it's great. And you got your pedals set up and your rig's all set up and everything's connected and it's sounding great. Somebody puts out something new and you go, shit.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of really exciting things going on, I think, in the world of guitar gear and amps and guitars and even plugins and everything. It's a really exciting time. A lot of great people creating great things going on right now in terms of that stuff. The only thing is, it's a hell of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not like, say, in the 70s or even the 80s, maybe even the early 90s, where you could buy a guitar and an amp and a cabinet, and there was so much available to choose from. That's how it was. And especially when you get into, like, say, the 60s or the 70s, there was Marshall and there was Fender, and that was kind of it.
Pretty much.
Right? So you had to get your Les Paul or your Stratocaster or whatever, and your Marshall stack or your
high watt.
Yeah, your Fender Twin Reverb, whatever. That was it. But the funny thing about that is, in all this technology, a lot of it is trying to recreate that magic tone of those tube amps. That exists too. Is how do you get that? But I think it goes beyond that, and it's just a really exciting time. There's so many cool things out there.
Yeah, there's I didn't attend this year. You were there for a couple of days. You went to NAMM a couple weeks ago, and there's just so many exciting new things that are out. Like there's that company Neural DSP. They've been doing like the Fortin plugins and a lot of the Ola Englund stuff, and a lot of the super high gain tight thing. Mm-hmm. And they just got some killer amp emulations. They got a whole new floorboard unit that they're putting out this year that looks to be fairly impressive. Line 6 with the Helix thing. The Helix thing's expanding and constantly getting new amp models and stuff like that. And then even on the real tube amp side, there's so many new companies. You got Rev, who's been around for probably about 5 years, who's doing some killer stuff. Kyle over at KSR, all the new EVH stuff that's been out. And Dave Friedman's just been fucking dominating the tonal spectrum of the guitar player for the last 10 years. His stuff's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Well, for me, between the EVH stuff and the Friedman B100 I just acquired, that's just some of the best stuff out there. But I'm also a big fan of the PVs, of the 6505s. Yeah, I think that is a great amp. I think that's a very consistent and dependable amp. The 65 or the 6505, 6505 or 6505 plus, both of them. I think they're just fantastic amps.
Yeah, that whole 5150 genre is a great thing.
So really, it's like any Eddie amp and Friedman.
Pretty much.
That's kind of where I'm at.
Anything Eddie touches and anything Dave Friedman touches, you're pretty much good to go.
That's kind of, for me, at this point in time, we'll see what happens. But I mean, at this point in time, as far as tube amps, that's kind of where I've been for a little while, especially on the Eddie stuff, the 6505 and the EV8 stuff. That's kind of where I've been for a while now as far as amps.
Yeah, I got my first 5150 a year or two after they came out. It was like 94, I think I got my first one. And I had it till 4 or 5 years ago. It blew up on me. And then I moved into KSR territory for a little while. Thank you, Kyle. That was awesome. And then from there, now it's pretty much all EVH stuff. But I have access to a Friedman now, so we'll see what happens.
Well, it's funny that speaking of the 5150, that I remember people were saying, "Oh, they sound too fizzy," or they sound, like there was that whole thing going on. And so anybody out there who has a 5150 head and it's sitting in your closet, you're not playing it because it's too fizzy, here's a little tip for you. Don't turn the mid up past like 9 o'clock, and it won't be fizzy.
Yeah.
It's not a Marshall head. It's its own sort of design. So you got to play with the tone controls as far as how that is set up, how that is designed. Don't just go for, usually like with a Marshall amp, you'll take the mid-range and you'll put it in the middle.
Yeah.
That's what I always
Start at the middle and then go up or down from there as needed.
Right. But with those heads, the mid control is extremely sensitive. And yeah, you can't really go up, at least for me. I don't think I've ever taken the mid-range on those past like 4.
Yeah, me either.
My
settings on that amp are for the tone controls 7, 3, 7. And then presence 5 or 6, resonance straight up the middle, and then gain at like 3.5, 4.
And it's the same thing with the 6505s and the EVH too.
Yeah.
I think it's just the design and how it is. It's not, that's something I have to tell people all the time. With different amps, like say the EVH or whatever, it's not a Marshall.
Yeah.
So you can't try to dial them in like a Marshall, or it's a different amp. Duh. You know what I mean?
I did the same thing when I got my first 5150.
Me too.
I tried dialing it like I used to dial my 800, and it just does not work.
Yeah.
You got to think completely differently with that amp. And then on top of that, there's so much gain on tap. Just so stupid amounts of gain in that amp.
Yeah, well, I think that's with the Van Halen kind of amps is that there's the cold bias, which some people mod those amps. I don't really get that. I don't really understand why, but it's a preamp based amp. So it's a cold bias. And the cool thing about that is you can swap out tubes without biasing the amp.
Yeah.
Your tubes get old or whatever, you just swap them out. Both the power and the preamp tubes. Yep. It's great.
It was awesome.
And it sounds awesome. And the other thing is all the headroom that exists in that design. Not just the volume in the game, but with the tone controls.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of headroom. And that really is a brilliant idea. And we understand why that is.
Keeps everything nice and tight and clean.
Yeah, and you can't, you're not going to bottom out the bass, but still have plenty of bass. You're not going to, you're not going to get, you're going to be able to dial in your treble and your presence and everything else just right with plenty to work with. You're never going to go all the way on 10 with any of those knobs, but that's not the point. The point is the headroom, so you don't bottom out the bass, and so you have plenty to work with to get that sweet spot you like with the tone controls. And it's really just a great design.
Yeah.
It really is. Say like with, again, nothing against Marshall. I mean, we all love I have a great old Marshall that's modded that is awesome.
Killer old
I love
Marshall.
it. Yeah, I love that. I love that amp. If I were ever homeless, I'd have a guitar and that amp like in a shopping cart. You know what I mean? Seriously, love the old Marshalls, and that's the granddaddy of all of this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. I have nothing against Marshall, but Marshalls, especially old, like say an old stock JMP, which is my favorite Marshall.
Mine too.
You can only get so much out of the, That's where people started using tube screamers.
Tube screamers and super overdrives. Yep.
Yeah, and that's a cool thing in and of itself. I'm not a distortion guy, but that's a cool thing in and of itself. So, it's just I don't really know too much of them anymore, but I know I've met a lot of people over the years who just like, Les Paul and Marshall, like that's it. And it's like that's just not the be all end all anymore. It was all that existed at one time.
Yeah.
But that's not the be all end all.
And it's a great tone. I mean, that Les Paul and Marshall thing is a staple of rock and metal music, hands down.
Well, everything else is branches.
Yes,
of that.
Branches of that.
Yeah.
Those are the roots of the tree.
Yeah.
And then everything else just kind of moves out from there, without a doubt.
But it's still but that means that there's more to choose from.
Yeah.
And I think it's silly to just be stuck on that. And if you go back to that, but at least explore it, because there are so many tonal options, and especially depending on what kind of music you play, or if you want, if you play like really heavy music, well, you don't really want to use a stock Marshall. No. You know what I mean? But I'm sure there's a guy out there who plays really heavy music but just swears by his stock Marshall. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I'm sure there are guys that do that. I wouldn't doubt it. Nowadays it seems on the heavy end of things, like the extreme heavy end of things, it's more that amp companies like Rev, Mike Fortin's big in that right now. Fortin's kind of like the guy for super high gain right now. Kyle KSR, he's another guy he's got a slightly different take on the super high gain thing, but they all do great jobs at it.
Mm-hmm.
They're all able to take that like super amount of gain and just keep it tight and not make it muddy and disgusting. There's just so much good stuff out there now.
Yeah, I mean it's all preference. Like when I say the Eddie amps and the Friedman, which to me, no question, fantastic amplifiers. But there's other great stuff out there. It just depends on your taste. Like Diesel's been making great stuff.
VH4's killer.
Bogner's been making great stuff for a long time. Wizard.
Oh yeah.
They got a thing going on. There's all kinds. So, it's like whatever, you're into. That's what you're into. It's just an example of what I'm talking about. There's so many cool things. There's so many great amps to choose from, and to find what works for you. And that's really what it comes down to.
Absolutely. It's like, I do the recording thing, and I help out on a lot of recording forums and things like that. And people are always asking, they're always asking questions like, well, how do I get this tone? How do I get that tone? How do I get this tone? And it's just, I mean, sure, have an idea what you want in your head, but at the same time, try to find your own thing. There's so much stuff out there with so many companies. It's very easy to kind of find your own little niche nowadays.
Yeah, you could really, if you get into it, which I do, which I know you do, if you really get into it and enjoy it, you could end up with a really killer guitar tone that you're excited about, and there's nothing better than that, especially if you play live and you got the rig all set up and you're playing loud, you're playing rock and roll. There's nothing more satisfying than having a great tone under your fingers. To me, it just inspires me to play better, and is more enjoyable, and it's fun, and and all that good stuff. And another thing about that is, we're talking about amps, but I think something some people tend to forget sometimes is that you got to have a good sounding guitar too.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that, and it's I don't think it's like stupid or anything like that, but I think it's just a thing, where the amp is the amp, and you dial in the amp, and that gets your sound. And while that's true, the guitar is in that equation. It's a very important thing. Huge. So the type of guitar you have, a quality guitar, the pickup you use that you like, even the strings, can matter. Like
we'll get shit for this, but the tone wood.
The tone wood, yeah. Yeah, tone wood doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
That is just ridiculous. I don't get that. But a good instrument, even if you just have one guitar, make an effort to get something. I understand money and all that. And, trust me, when I started out, I didn't have a great guitar. I had a bolt-on Les Paul copy that I got for Christmas, and I loved that guitar. But, get something. You start playing in bands and stuff. Save up your ducats and get something good. Save up You know, save up some money and get something that's a good guitar. Get good pickups. Research all of that. Have a good sounding guitar. And there's all kinds of, you know, the aftermarket stuff is killer that you can get.
Yeah.
You know, to upgrade your guitar. You know, FU tone and you know
Duncan pickups,
Duncan pickups. Yeah, Jalen, which is a great pickup.
The Lawlers are really
Lawler.
good too,
You know, the Machine Heads, the Clusons, and you know, Godot, I think, still makes some cool stuff.
yeah, absolutely.
Tone Pros with their bridges that are just that much better. They're fantastic.
Still locking bridges are great. I love them.
Yeah, there's so many things out there. You could take a guitar that's a good guitar and make it sound even better with the hardware that you put on it. You know,
Absolutely.
So it's so important to have a good sounding guitar. Even if you just have one guitar, make sure it's a good sounding guitar.
Yeah.
And you know, from the fingers to the guitar, through the cable, through the head, through your cabinet. You know, research getting good speakers. You know, it's such a fun journey that never ends. It can drive you nuts, but
yeah, that's true. I mean, the speaker thing is a whole wormhole, man.
That's a whole nother thing,
man.
Yeah.
You know, all the different brands. Number one, the different types of speakers that each brand has. You know, how much the speaker cabinet affects the tone of everything that you do is massive.
Yep.
Absolutely massive.
Yeah, all those things. Every part of the equation is so important.
It all matters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it can encompass your entire life.
Yeah, you know, it's like one of the things you turned on me. You know, the FU tone stuff. You know, we're both Floyd Rose guys. You know, we have hardtail guitars that we play as well, but we're mainly Floyd Rose guys. Mm-hmm. And you got a guitar, you got some FU tone upgrades. He's like, dude, you got to check this out. It's amazing. And I had played the guitar before, and then I played it again after, and I was like, this is pretty impressive. Now I have to do all these upgrades to my guitar. I can't have you have a better sounding guitar than me, man. It's not allowed.
Yeah. And you know, Adam, he's a friend of mine, and
good guy.
You know, we become friends, and he takes care of me, and you know, and this isn't even really a plug. I mean, I guess it is.
No, it is, but it's not.
But the truth of the matter is, once I tried those upgrades in my Floyd with the brass block and the stainless steel screws and the he has this thing called the PMS.
Yeah.
The pickup mounting system. The brass thing that you direct mount your pickup to the guitar. Look it up if you don't understand what I mean. It's killer. I just can't look back. I hear such a difference in the tone of my guitar and my overall sound that there's no way I can go back. I get something with a Floyd on it, it's getting upgraded with FU tone stuff. Period.
Yeah. Adam just did a cool video with the guys with Paul Riario from Guitar World about they upgraded this Dean with a bunch of FU tone parts, and the difference in tone is amazing.
Yep.
But there's so much stuff out there. You don't have to stick with just a stock guitar and just be stuck with whatever it is. You know, if there's one little thing you don't like, change it. Change it up. Spend the extra money to do it. It's so worth it.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've kind of always been that way, you know. But yeah. I remember that guitar I was talking about, that my first kind of decent guitar I got for Christmas. It was a Westminster Les Paul copy.
Westminster
it was called.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it was cool. I loved it to death. You know, it was just so beautiful. And my dad, who was a musician, said, "Don't ever take a screwdriver to your guitar. Just don't ever do that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." The next day, I had the neck off. I had the pick guard off. You know, I'd taken the jack out. You know, I took a screwdriver and a crescent wrench to it. But I've always, you know, how does it work? What's going on here? This is so neat. You know, it's so cool. So I've always been like that. And then, you know, as I got a little bit older, you know, right around 12 or something like that, and Van Halen came out, and I started, you know, I mean, even at that age, I was looking at that and going, wow, you know, I'm into guitar, and started hearing about or reading about how he made the Frankie, his Frankenstein, and then it went to another level. Of course you can do that. Of course you can make your guitar exactly how you want it. You know, I don't care really about aesthetics. I don't really care about any of that. Just if it sounds good, whatever it takes to make it sound good. I mean, that Eddie Frankenstein is beat to shit. I mean, it is. I mean, if you see, there's so many photos available of it, but if you see where he, put that double hump, I mean, it's just, he just gouged it, and never did anything to change that way that looks. It's so like, but, he's recorded the bulk of his music with that guitar. With that guitar.
Mm-hmm.
That guitar is Eruption, and Eruption is like, the crown jewel of the guitar solo, right? Set the bar at the time.
Yeah.
And, and the tone and everything about that. But, we'll do a whole other episode on Van Halen.
We're going to do a whole other episode on Super Strats and how much Eddie actually had influence over that entire Super Strat industry. I mean, Eddie really put that on the map. The Strat guitar with the humbucker. Eddie was the first guy, man.
It didn't exist.
Nope, did not exist.
It didn't exist.
Didn't.
Yeah, and again, like that's my main guitar is essentially an Eddie's
Frankenstrat.
Yeah,
it's a Frankenstrat.
That one pickup, one knob, maple, fretboard and neck. Kind of beat up. I mean, it's because that's really all I need.
It's the influence, man. It's the influence, and it's a killer sounding guitar, dude. We'll get into that one really deep when we do the Super Strat episode. Bring that along with you for that episode, and we'll show it off and do some stuff with it. The killer sounding guitar, man. Yeah.
It needs a fret job. It needs a refret right now. So
we'll still look at it, and we'll show everybody how it's done.
Yeah,
because it's very well done on that guitar.
Yeah,
very well.
And I have a second one that I built too, which is really great.
Duncan Guitarist 2 came out great too.
Yeah,
very cool.
Maybe I'll market that one day.
Hopefully, we'll find somebody to build one. Any guitar builders out there want to build a custom, like Frankenstratty kind of thing? Not without stripes, of course, but get in touch with us.
Yeah. Somebody want to build a signature? I've been with ESP for 20 years. And hopefully they'll do it eventually.
That'd be cool.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
That'd be nice.
Another thing you turned me on to, damn ESP guitars. Son of a bitch. Yeah, Jeff has a ton of influence on me because Jeff finds great stuff that sounds really great, and then we just have such the same similar tone in our head. Is really what it is. It's one of the things. It's really crazy. Dude from the East Coast, dude from Cali, and just. Somehow, we both like the same thing.
Yeah. To sound good.
Yes. Well, that's true. Sounding good is important.
Good tone. Good tone. Yeah, that's what all that comes down to. And ESP, that company has been so good to me for so long, and they just make great guitars.
They do.
That's what I play, and for some reason they just let me keep hanging around and bugging them.
They like you.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess they do. But when I play, with Armored Saint, I mean, that's all I use. It's me and Phil Sandoval. We just use ESP guitars, and it's been that way since 2000.
Wow.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you never see any of the guitar players in Armored Saint on stage with anything but a ESP.
Even Joey. Joey plays him too.
Joey as well. Yeah, he uses the ESP basses, and they've just been consistent and great. And again, they've just been so good to us. We don't have any. We don't have. Put it this way: we don't have any lack of guitars or basses. We're in good shape.
That's awesome. Again, sound like a plug for ESP, but it's definitely not. Just things we like. That's what this whole podcast is about. It's just talking about the shit we like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm there's plenty of stuff that I can talk about that I like, and it doesn't mean it's because they give me stuff or something that. If it sounds good, it is good. If I like it, I like it. I don't care if I paid for it or whatever. I'm going to share the information.
Christ, we used that was Squire, right? Was it a Squire Strat or Mexican Strat on the record for that one tune? I can't remember what it was.
It was a Squire Strat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it just had this cool vibe about it. It was like a Strat, because it's a Strat, of course, so it's got that Stratty thing. But there was just something right about it for what we used it for. It just sounded perfect for the part.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. It worked out. It sounded cool.
Again,
for the part.
There's just proof that even today's crap guitars are better than what we are really good. What people would call crap guitars,
Yeah. Well,
so what? $200 Strat?
Yeah, isn't it great? I told you about my first decent guitar, but the guitar I had before that, was a real piece of junk, which I traded this kid. He had this guitar, and I think he found it in the trash. I don't know where he got it. He's like, look what I found. And I was probably about, 11 years old, and I was really into BMX at the time, but I was really getting into guitar too, and it was an electric guitar.
Did you had a Mongoose?
No, I had a Schwinn Stingray.
A Schwinn Stingray, hell yeah.
With tough wheels and crossbars. It was killer. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
But it's because I was really into building bikes before. And then I got into guitar, and then it went into that direction. But this kid, he had this guitar, and I was like, what are you gonna do? I want that. And he was like, I want $10 or something. That's like, he may as well said $100, $1,000 to me at the $10, And I said, I'll trade you something for it. And he said, give me your pads. He wanted all my dirt bike pads, my crossbar pad. And because I had my bike all decked out with that. As soon as he said, give me your pads, before he even finished the sentence, I was taking them off. I wanted that fucking electric guitar,
That's awesome.
And, I still have it to this day. I still have that guitar hanging up on the wall in my music room at home. And, but boy, what a piece of junk. But it was everything to me. I learned, bar chords on that. And, even like my first sort of pentatonic blues lick or whatever on that guitar. And I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world,
That's awesome.
And it's really not, this was in probably the late 70s or something like that. Yeah. Mid to late 70s. And, it's old and it's been hanging around, but it doesn't play any different than it did then. Right. And it's just awful, man. But hey, maybe that made my hands nice and strong,
Yeah, who knows, man?
Yeah, because I definitely had the the blistered fingers and everything.
Calluses making the fingers bleed, working on everything.
Well, that's the guitar that beat my fingertips up,
Yeah.
I love that I still have that thing,
That's so awesome.
Because there's so many. That being the first guitar I ever had, and all the guitars I've been through since, but I still have that first one.
That's so awesome.
Right?
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's a great thing, man. I wish I still had my first guitar. I don't know what the hell happened to that thing. I have no idea. I wouldn't even know where to begin to look.
Well, I thought I lost that guitar. And I went to my mom's house in the garage where all this crap was that she kept, and I thought it was in there. I thought I'd left it, looking all over the place. I'm like, can't find it. I asked her, where's that guitar? So I wanted to hang it in my apartment or whatever. I don't know. And my mom passed away, and so we had to clean out the house and clean out that garage when that happened and all that stuff that sucks. And went in the bedroom and cleaning out the closet, and that guitar was in the corner of the closet.
Wow.
She hid it from me because she didn't trust that if I took it, because I was moving around a lot at the time, she didn't want me to lose it. She didn't want anything to happen. So she hid it in the closet and lied to me so that it would be okay. Isn't that awesome?
That is amazing.
Yeah. So because of that, when I figured that out, I really always know where it is. It's always visible to me.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Such a great thing. Where'd you move on from there, guitar-wise? You said you had that Les Paul copy.
I got that Les Paul copy for Christmas. And then that guitar actually took a spill, and the neck broke right in half.
It's just like a real Les Paul.
Yeah. And even though it was a bolt-on guitar, it was like, I didn't know anything about go and get another neck. I didn't know that you could do that, and I don't even know what happened to that. But I ended up getting an SG, and that was the guitar where I really really honed in. Like
An actual SG Gibson.
yeah, it was a '68 SG. I wish I still had that fucking thing. Um, but it had the that tailpiece on it. The
Yeah.
silver with
Mm-hmm.
the Gibson etching and all that,
Hell yeah.
and that kind of whammy bar. The Angus Young
Yeah.
vibe. And I got an SG because I was really, really into Sabbath at that point in time. So I wanted an SG, Tony Iommi,
Hell yeah.
and Angus Young. And that was the guitar where I really learned how to like become a lead guitar player. And plus I was a little older by then. I was probably about 15, and really pursuing that. But that was the guitar where I really learned, started to become an actual guitarist. Or where I started to blossom.
Right.
With that guitar.
Started developing your own style and.
Yeah, and just really understanding it, starting to get it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Just playing, and that was the guitar cut 6 period in school, so you can go home, shut the door, and plug into your amp and play the Sabbath records. That was that time. That was that guitar. I got in trouble for cutting class, but I was getting better on guitar, so.
I got in trouble for cutting class for going home and practicing too.
yeah, it's kind of like that in Goodfellas, where he gets a whooping from his pop.
Yep.
For hanging out at the cab stand, but he's like, yeah, that's all right. I'll take a beating now and then.
Absolutely, man. For me it was my old man had a ton of guitars laying around the house, so I got to play on some pretty amazing instruments from day one. I learned on a Gretsch White Falcon. That eventually this podcast will tell the story of that guitar.
That's a giant guitar.
It's a very big guitar. It's a giant guitar. Dad was a jazz guy. That's really where I came up with doing the jazz thing. Unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to listen to rock and roll, even though the reason I play guitar is Dad was watching an old 8mm film of Jimmy at Woodstock. That's what made me pick up the guitar, man.
Yeah, the first thing I ever learned, my dad showed me, was Johnny Be Good.
Mine was Wipeout.
Well, those are both great starting points.
Yep, that's what they were. Yeah. First song I ever performed live was Johnny Be Good. The first song I ever played live. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's it's so cool and fortunate for guys like us, because the first song I was ever shown was Johnny Be Good.
Yeah.
And then you said Wipeout, and then first song you played live with Johnny Be Good. And Johnny Be Good, that's Chuck Berry. That's one of the founders of rock and roll.
Yes.
And that's so cool, or not that cool if I look at the date on my driver's license, but other than that, it's so cool to have those origins, my origins are really steeped in where rock and roll came from.
Yeah.
And that's such a special thing. I mean, nothing to like younger people now, someone who's 20 now who their origins might be somewhere else.
Yeah.
80s,
90s.
And that's fine, there's a lot of great music to come from, but when you like I was taught from my dad, who showed me like kind of beginning chords and the 1-5 chord and the E and all that. Mm-hmm. And he was from the 50s. I mean, he was a crooner in the 50s, and he played guitar. And so what he was into was like, like that, like Chuck Berry and Elvis and,
right.
All the original, the OG rock and roll people who brought it to the table, and that's so cool, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My house, like I said, my dad was a jazz guy. Mom was firmly like a hippie. So I had the best of both worlds on either side. Dad was very classically trained and into the jazz guitar thing. So, his influences, Django, Joe Pass, all of those guys. And then on Mom's side, I had Jimmy, the Doors, Janis Joplin, the Chambers Brothers, the Beatles, the Stones, all of that stuff when I was a kid, And then my grandparents on top of that, who I spent a lot of time around, they were the old crooners, Sinatra and Tony Bennett and Sammy Davis and why am I totally drawing a blank on Dean Martin? Dean Martin, So musical upbringing for me was all real classic stuff as well.
And that's great, ear training stuff.
Oh yeah.
And you don't even realize it's doing it.
Absolutely.
It's just going in there. if you have that musical thing about yourself, your being. I think if that's going into your your young brain, it's really doing that. It's training the ear.
Yeah.
Quality melody, quality stuff going in there.
Yeah, makes a huge difference.
Okay, here's a good one. What was the first guitar solo you ever heard that wanted you to be a lead guitar player?
To make me just a lead guitar player, not just want to play guitar.
Right, be a lead guitar player.
It's so cliche, but you're going to hear it and you're going to laugh, and I'm going to laugh too. The first guitar solo I ever heard that while I was coming up, starting the instrument, was Eddie Van Halen. Beat It.
Beat It.
Beat It. I heard it and I was like, oh, that's cool. What is that? And Dad was like, oh, that's Eddie Van Halen. He's like some rock guy that everybody loves. Because Dad didn't know at the time. He had no idea.
Well, that is a pretty fucking amazing lead.
That is a pretty amazing lead. But from there, it was like, Dad was like, oh, where'd you hear that? It was on Top 40 radio, And, he was like, well, if you like that, you should listen to this. And he handed me Al Di Meola's Casino. He was like, listen to this. This guy kind of plays like that, really fast.
Great album.
A great album. And as now, Eddie plays nothing like Al Di Meola. Al Di Meola plays nothing like Eddie. No. The only thing they had in common was speed, maybe. That's about it. But Al was probably, he's probably still my biggest influence, without a doubt. Dad was just caught in that. He's like, if you want to listen to the rock thing, I'm going to bring you in. It's got to come from a place where the guys know what the hell they're doing.
Right.
The biggest disappointment from my dad was the day I brought home Destroyer and was like, oh my God, this guy's the greatest guitar player ever.
Yeah. Cool. Maybe not the greatest ever.
Dude, at that time, he was the greatest guitar player ever. I still love Ace. Still to this day love Ace.
Of course. Now the first guitar solo I ever heard that made me want to be a lead guitar player was Terry Kath 25 or 624.
Oh, great solo.
Yeah, because my dad used to listen to that album all the time.
Great album. Great
and
band.
That solo made me go, wow, I want to learn how to do that. And it was a trip because I didn't see it, I just heard it.
No, yeah.
You know what I mean? And it sounded like a magic trick.
Yeah.
That he was doing that, and I'd already kind of been delving into guitar a little bit at that point. But that's where I want to do that. I want to know how to do that. That's cool.
That's a great solo too, man. Oh, dude. That totally trumps Eddie, bro. That's a killer one.
Yeah. Eddie came later, a matter of fact, I don't think that when I heard 25 or 64, Van Halen 1 hadn't come out yet.
Yeah, no.
I'm showing my age.
Yeah, that's okay. That's right. See, that's the difference here. We are exactly a generation apart.
Yeah.
Exactly a generation apart. So that's where Chicago for you, Eddie Van Halen for me.
Yeah.
But and the strange part is I didn't really get into Eddie till later because of that. Not because that was the first solo I heard that showed me lead guitar. Then Dad put me on this, put me on the jazz fusion train, man, and it was just like, that late '70s jazz fusion, Mahavishnu Orchestra, Return to Forever, Al Di Meola, Stanley Clarke, Stanley Jordan, Joe Pass.
Well, as you know, I got very heavily into Eddie.
Oh yeah.
Shortly thereafter.
You're way fanatical on the Eddie thing, way more than I am.
From the first album, I was a big Kiss freak, like you're saying. And when I got into Kiss, Alive had just come out, or Destroyer, one of the two.
By the time I got into Kiss, Ace and Peter were already out of the band.
Yeah. Well, I saw Kiss at, remember that movie, The Phantom of the Park?
Oh, yeah.
I was at that concert that's in the movie.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Puppet Show and Kiss. No, just kidding.
But I was a huge Kiss fan, and me and my brother Matt, just insane over Kiss. Like a lot of guys at that time, kids, boys our age, it was crazy. But then when they got into the capes and all that, and the colors, I was kind of losing interest. This kid turned me on to Van Halen 1, and that was it. And I was I mean, I'll always love Kiss,
Of course.
But as a musician, as a guitar player, which is what I wanted to, which is I started getting to doing, and I heard that was it for me,
Yeah.
And I was just, Van Halen guy after that.
What album, other than Van Halen 1, because we know that's a given, really made you sit down and go, okay, let's look at it this way? Because I have a year in my musical influences in playing that heavily influenced me with all the records that happened to come out that year. And that year happens to be 1988. 88 was the year we got Injustice from Metallica. We got No Rest for the Wicked by Ozzy. We got Painkiller from Judas Priest. There was just this whole State of Euphoria by Anthrax was around that time for me. There was just this something about that year, the music that came out really struck me in a major way. Way Cool Jr. by Rat. So much stuff in that one particular year, like within 4 or 5 months, either way, into 89 or back into 87. The Whitesnake album with Sykes was the end of 87. Those were real pinnacle influences for me when it came to guitar playing and finding my influences. What do you think that year was for you, if you think about it?
I think it was probably, I got to think about this. I mean, definitely coming out of junior high school, ish. Like I said, I was really into Sabbath, and I was really into Tony Iommi and that whole thing. And I always tell people Tony Iommi was my guitar teacher because the first, the first album, Paranoid, Master of Reality, and Volume 4, those were the albums that taught me how to play guitar, rock guitar, really. But do you mean like from a certain time period, or?
Yeah, just like, like a bunch of albums that came out right around the same time that really just like made you think of guitar and launched you in another direction or expanded upon your knowledge of the instrument.
Well, I'll definitely say Van Halen, Fair Warning, and Screaming for Vengeance, Judas Priest. In that time, it was kind of like...
So, what, 82-ish?
Yeah. Another album I was really into was Restless and Wild, Accept.
Great.
And I think those 3 records around then really changed me, or made me not decide, but took me to the next level.
Right.
Took me to the next level as a guitar player. It's like, okay, now I'm going to go here, and then it just kind of, hopefully you just keep getting better, but there was so much stuff, coming out of that time that was so good as far as guitar players. I mean, just sick.
I mean, you talk the pre-85 stuff, or let's say the 86 is the cutoff, okay? We'll do, what year was Van Halen 1?
79, 78?
78, 79.
78.
So that 6-7 year period, you think about all the amazing guitar players that we got in that little time period. Schenker, Uli, Eddie,
Randy Rhoads,
Yngwie Malmsteen, technically Steve Vai. He came, even though it was at Zappa school, but at the time, but still, Vai came out of that. Warren DeMartini.
Was Satriani out by then?
Yeah, I think Satriani's first was like just the tail of 86.
Right.
So.
Right.
So he just hits that window.
But there are all those great, Jakey Lee.
Huge influence on both of us. Loved me some Jake.
Yeah, who's somewhere in this town right
George
now
Lynch.
Where we're sitting.
How do you not mention Lynch?
Yeah, George Lynch.
Steve Lynch from Autograph. Another one.
Really, really great. Underrated
Guitar player. Yep. Very underrated. Brad Gillis and Jeff Watson in that time period too. So many.
Yeah, great. Vivian Campbell.
Yeah, figures. Think of them. Then the first thing that comes to your head is his solo, Brad Gillis's weird solo on Stars, and then you go, "Oh wait, Vivian Campbell." It's such a weird solo, but so Gillis.
Yeah,
so Gillis.
Yeah, so many. I mean, those are all the players that came out then that kind of set the standard for a particular way to approach the guitar.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say like a style or in a cliche way, but just a different way to approach the guitar, which I think, anybody who plays a guitar with some amount of distortion on it, even in country, that those techniques and that style was cemented at that time as far
Absolutely.
as and brought to the table, by all of those, a lot of those guys we're talking about.
Yeah.
Akira Takasaki was another one.
Akira is amazing.
Yeah, but he was from then too.
Tone.
Yeah.
Oh, the tone on that first record. Oh my God, dude.
But I remember I heard that Thunder in the East. I remember I listened to that and like it was a trip because you know how the Japanese are, right? He'd lay out the solo and just be killing it, but he'd be like, within like, an 8 or 16 bar solo, he pulled off Eddie, Schenker, Blackmore, like
yes,
but
absolutely.
very, very well. And it's
Yeah.
very well composed, but you could hear what he was listening to and taking on and into.
Yeah.
Because he
absolutely.
was doing it, he was replicating it exactly.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like he was replicating one guy. He was doing all of these influences in one solo.
Yeah.
So cool.
And that whole thing also in turn, I would say it created a style. I would disagree with you, and I would call that style the shrapnel style, because all of those guys are the guys that influenced the next big wave, which was that late '80s shrapnel thing.
Right, Paul Gilbert.
Paul Gilbert and Richie Kotzen, Greg Howe, McAlpine. All the guys that Varney signed.
Right.
Right. Becker, Friedman, all of those guys. If you look at a guy like Marty, his big guy was Uli. He loved Uli. And totally could hear it in his playing too. Just amazing. But it's like that. There's like a 6 to 10 year gap every time where you can really see the jumps and the way the influences work. And every 20 years you get the same influence from before that kind of pop back.
Right.
It's amazing. All of those shrapnel guys, every one of them mentions Eddie Van Halen. Every one of them mentions Uli Roth. Every one of them mentions Michael Schenker. They're just in that school.
Yeah, Blackmore too.
Blackmore is another huge influence.
Everybody always mentions Sales of Sharon.
Dude, come on. Might be the best thing Uli ever did.
Yeah, it's definitely
Might.
Yeah.
There's so much other great
But
stuff.
I mean, if you listen to the album Virgin Killer, there's every solo is just amazing and killer and ahead of its time, really.
Way ahead of its time.
Yeah, he was like, I think Uli was the original rock shredder.
Probably.
Yeah, I think he was the first shredder.
Yeah.
I don't know who was doing that because those early Scorpions records. Thinking about it, they're pretty old. I mean, that's like 70s.
Yeah.
And he's playing like that and shredding, and shredding didn't really show up till the 80s.
Yeah,
But
neoclassical influence, all of that.
But
yeah,
he was already
in the
doing
70s.
it. I mean, maybe. No, I think he was even doing it before Gary Moore, who was early on. Who's someone we failed to mention.
Well, I think we were thinking more metal guys, but it's just the influence thing. We're metal guys. What can we do? But Gary Moore, another one. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple other guys in there too. You got Clapton. I mean, Clapton was huge. I mean, if you're going to talk about Eddie, you can't not talk about Eric.
Right.
That's where Eddie comes from.
Right. Cream Clapton.
Yes, Cream Clapton. Yeah, which is still my favorite Clapton.
Right. Yeah.
Most
people.
I still listen to Disraeli Gears every week, at least once a week. I love that record.
Yeah.
Everything about it.
Yeah, he mellowed out kind of early on, didn't he?
No, yeah, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But in Cream, he was pretty ferocious.
Yeah.
Had a pretty wicked.
The tone, everything, man.
Yeah.
It was angry. There was so much angry guitar playing, but that smooth. It was just so much aggression in it and so much feel and so much tone.
And it sounded so loud.
Because it was.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it was so loud. I was actually messing with the Helix the other day. I was trying to get that Beano sound. The old Marshall Brules breaker from the John Mayall record. I was working on that one. That real buzzy, just, fully balls out Marshall blues breaker sound.
Right.
So hard to get, man. So hard to get.
Yeah, which is, kind of full circle. That goes back to, that's the tree that everything had branched off from, It's like, okay, I got that old blues breaker sound, but when going through like all the different things that happened, say in the 80s or whatever, the ADA and the Bradshaw rigs and the this and the that, and it kind of came back around to good tube amp.
Good tube amp.
Good tube amp through a cabinet.
Yep.
And a pedal board.
I think I really think what happened in the 80s is just because you had the whole digital revolution in the 80s, really. Keyboards became a big thing, and the keyboard sounds were emulating things in real life, and then they tried doing the same thing with guitar amps. Well, we can kind of emulate this tube thing. We could use MOSFET and different kinds of transistors to try and, the early 80s were that big transistor solid state amp thing.
Yeah.
Randall hit really hard, Gallion Kruger.
Right. Remember Lab Series?
Lab Series. Oh my God. Great jazz amps, by the way.
I had a Lab Series. I had a 410 combo. 410 combo. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, that's great. Hell yeah, dude. That's awesome. But it's definitely come back around to full circle to the real tube thing. But and now emulations are so good.
You could hear too if like some of those old 80s movies, they'll have like, a song come on like
that sounds cheesy, like it was on Miami Vice.
Yes, yeah. Well, she's gonna make it tonight or whatever, you know what I mean? And then the guitar solo will happen and you can hear it. It sounds like a Jackson Dinky through an ADA with all this chorus on it, way too much reverb and delay. You know that sound. It's almost like it was the same guy.
Oh yeah,
playing the same rig on every one of those. It was the same guy.
It was Carl Verheyen.
Yeah, no, it was Steve Lukather. He played on everything.
It was probably. You're right. It was probably Luke. Through his Bradshaw rig with his Mesas.
Yeah, it has to be a Jackson Dinky.
If it was Luke, it wasn't a Jackson Dinky. It was probably that Valley Arch guitar.
Yeah, there you go.
Super Strat.
Right.
Any way you look at it.
Yeah, a Jackson Dinky copy.
That's funny. But yeah, man. I mean, if you can relate to that, you know exactly what we're talking about, man. That was the sound then, though. It really was.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really till the late 80s that started getting broken away from.
Yeah, the chorus was a big thing. I remember I ran my original band, Odin. I ran 2 stacks. It was insane. I ran 2 Marshall stacks.
This was clubs.
2 Marshall stacks, and they were in stereo, and they were created in stereo with a Lexicon PCM 41. So it was actually that delay chorus.
Millisecond delay chorus, yeah.
And then I had a Furman PQ3.
Everybody had them.
That I used to add gain and EQ it.
Yep.
Which was a trick that Chris Holmes showed me. Chris Holmes from Wasp showed me. And I ran like that. And we were a single guitar band, and it did sound massive. It did sound huge.
I was talking a couple weeks ago about that. It was with Michael Sweet from Stryper. We were talking about it. Because something had come up on Facebook, and we were talking about a Dime's tone, and Dime was a Furman PQ3 guy, and so I had mentioned something, and then Michael had said something. He goes, "Oh, you know where he learned that trick? He learned that trick from me." I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah." So then we went in private message, and we had this big long conversation about the PQ3, and Don got the idea from Michael, who probably got it from Chris. Who probably, know, I mean, you guys are all in the same scene back then. I mean, it all came from the same place.
Yeah, yeah. Chris showed me that. Actually, it was Chris Holmes that was the first guy who took me aside and said, "Your amp sounds like shit. Let me show you what you need to do, what you need to listen for to get good tone." He was the guy because he, people say whatever they want about Chris in his guitar playing or what. I mean, he's Chris Holmes, man. It doesn't matter, he's Chris.
I met Chris, very cool guy.
Awesome,
very
known
cool
him forever,
Yeah.
But he and I think he's a cool guitar player personally. He's just got a cool thing, about
Huge
him.
Fucking guy.
It's
massive.
Yeah.
Like a Neanderthal.
Well, and look, with any guitar player, if you can really be someone hear it and go, that's unmistakably them, I think you succeeded. Really. And Chris is one of those guitar players.
Yeah, I would agree.
But he took me aside and he taught me about what to listen for, in reference to speakers and what sort of frequencies you want to focus on to get a good guitar sound. He taught me all of that. I'm forever grateful to him for that.
That's great.
Because fortunately, I was able to understand what he was saying, but I couldn't find it necessarily on my own at that time because I was naive. Right? And he just kind of said, hey, check this out. If you want a good guitar sound, here's what you want to do.
Dude, there was a point in time where I thought playing through a Randall 115 bass amp, no, not Randall, Rickenbacker 115 bass amp with a DoD death metal was good tone.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's not tone at that point. It's sound.
It's just sound.
It's just sound. The more hey, I used to play I had a crate combo amp. One speaker back when they were in actual
crates,
crate.
yes.
Yeah. And I had this Electro Harmonix linear power booster that I plugged into that, and then I plugged it into this input of the amp. That was my rig.
Wow.
And the funny thing about that was my first real setup that I thought sounded good.
Because it gave you enough distortion.
Yeah, yeah. But the amp was so whatever that I had to plug this thing into it to get it to do something.
Yeah.
And again, full circle. On my pedal board, my boost pedal is an Electro Harmonix LPV booster, right? It's just the stomp box, right?
Yeah.
But back then it was this little silver thing with I don't know why it had a 1/4-inch plug on it. I don't have to look those up, to see what the hell that was, but it did the job,
Yeah.
But I thought that sounded cool.
Yeah, you're doing the same thing a lot of people do. Put it in the front of the amp, man.
I bet it didn't sound good.
It probably didn't, but at the time it did.
Yeah.
I think
it was inspiring enough.
I know what a DoD death metal sounds like. Okay? And I thought it was the greatest tone in the world back then, and it's just not.
Yeah.
Just not.
Yeah.
Just not. I can't really pinpoint where that turn came for me, where tone became where the chase started, I guess. For me, it was I think it just came out of the necessity for me when I was in my teens working in studios in New York City, just having to learn how to dial in amps and get tones, and I think that's probably where it came from. But I can't really pinpoint it to, one singular thing where like you have with Chris. I can't really pinpoint it to something like that. I'd watch the way guys dialed amps while I was working in the studios in the city and just really pay attention to what they were doing because I genuinely took an interest in it really early. Well,
the cool thing was that with Chris he was from La Cañada, which is out by where I grew up in L.A. La Cañada was right next to Pasadena.
Okay.
And Chris was probably 10 years older than me. And he came up in the same area with Eddie and Terry Kilgore. I mean, these guys he knew.
Right.
So they were all in that world of, that coming to be. I mean, a lot of people don't talk about Terry Kilgore, but he was kind of he was like Eddie. It was the same thing, the Variac and and all this stuff. Terry Kilgore was doing that too. He just didn't, apparently, I don't know him, but apparently he just didn't have the same get up and go that Eddie did.
Right.
As far as pursuing, a band or a career.
Right.
But so anyway, Chris was part of that whole thing. So these guys were all, opening up amps and fucking with them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And getting these...
electrocuting himself and blowing themselves across the room and shit. Yeah.
Right. So he was a great guy to learn from so essentially I was learning from the master class.
Yes.
You know what I mean? As far as that goes, which is, the Eddie world, and, because Chris was part of that.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that. I know that because I experienced it. I was right.
That's awesome.
I was just this naive kid standing there with a guitar, and the next thing I know, it could be because of where I happened to grow up. And I grew up in Glendale, which the next town over, there was Glendale, and there was Pasadena, and then La Cañada's right here. So it was all right there.
Right.
You know what I mean? But Van Halen was already happening, you know.
A thing,
yeah. I never saw them in the clubs or anything because by the time I got into it, they had Van Halen 1.
Right.
But, you know, I knew, you know, Chris, and we did a lot of shows with Odin, and we did a lot of shows with Wasp in the early days. And so, you know, I got, you know, taught from the, you know,
the masters.
Yeah, that crew, you know what I mean?
Hell yeah.
It's pretty cool, you know.
That's awesome.
But then I started listening to, like, you know, those Van Halen records, you know, particularly 1, 2, and
Fair Warning.
Right. Fair Warning later, but definitely the Women, Children First.
Women, Children First.
And you know, putting on the big headphones with the volume knobs on the side and listening to it and really listening to the guitar. And then when I figured out that you could pan it to where you could just hear the guitar, I really started listening for why it sounded so cool. Like, and my ears started to really get into tone.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't really accomplish it for quite some time. Because
you didn't know how.
It was naive, you know. Yeah. But I could hear it, and
it's very different than it is today. You know, you hear a sound in your head nowadays. You can go online and find out how to make that sound.
Yeah,
I mean, literally. I mean, you can find the exact key or the exact mic technique where they place the mic on the speaker.
Right.
You know, it's crazy.
But I didn't know anything about, you know, tubes. I didn't know anything about, you know, amplifiers. I didn't, other than, you know, until. You know, Chris showed me some stuff, sort of, but that really more opened my ear to figure it out. I was on my own. It was kind of like, here's what to listen for, and blah blah blah. Now go on your way, go on your journey. You know,
I've set you on the path. Now go, my child.
Right. Good luck. You know, but I didn't understand a lot of stuff. I didn't get it. You know, how come if I turn the gain up on this amp, it doesn't sound like, you know, Van Halen 2, right? Well, for one, it's not blistering loud, and
does it have a tube?
Yeah, there's all kinds of reasons. Yes. You know what I mean?
Tons of them.
And I still don't know if I've achieved that tone, but
nobody has since, man.
Well, you know,
people have gotten close, like Dave Friedman. He's gotten hella close,
very close. But you know, you're not the man playing the guitar.
Exactly.
You know, and that's
you're not playing the guitar.
Well, it's the man himself. It's a big,
absolutely,
huge part of all that. But yeah, I just had that BE 100 here the other day. We were playing through it, and
God, it's so good.
Yeah, and it does have that, you know, brown sound.
It's totally there, man. Yep. It's all there.
Yep.
I hit an A chord, dude, and I was like, eruption.
Yeah.
Like, there it is. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It really is just a killer amp. Dave is just. He's otherworldly with his stuff, man. I don't know how he does it, dude. He's got the golden ear. That's the only way you can put it.
Yep.
You know, he's got the golden ear to be able to just dial the amp just perfect. You know, it's just absolutely incredible the stuff he's making right now. You know, I had met Dave for the first time probably mid-90s. And just, you know, I mean, he was. I think he was a Bradshaw at the time, building Bradshaw rigs, you know. And then, what was it? 8 years ago, I think he came out with his first amp. Like 8 years ago or something like that. He came out with his first amp, and then everybody's just like, "Oh my God, you got to try the Friedman stuff." First time I plugged into one, man. It's all there.
Yeah,
everything you want.
Yeah, really, really grateful to have one. You know, which I gotta, you know, throw out a big. Hell yeah, to my buddy Tim Mitchell, who make fixed pedal boards, who makes all of my pedal boards.
I'm going to start charging him from these endorsements in a minute.
Yeah. Who, you know, not only has he made me great pedal boards for every occasion, but he's been extremely kind to me and, you know, sent some things my way, like my EVH,
right.
EL 3400 watt, the Friedman BE 100, just so kind and so good to me. So, thanks, Tim. You're awesome, man. If I ever have a kid, I will hand him to you. That's where we're at this point.
Fixpedalboards.com. Fixpedalboards.com.
Yeah, and stomp boxes, and he's just been really, really cool to me. Which does he didn't have to do that. The pedal boards were great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he turned me on to that amp, and
another guy who likes good tone though, and he wants to spread the word and share.
Yeah, we'll have to Skype him on here sometime.
Yeah, we got to either get him Skype in, dude. Bring him into Vegas for.
Yeah.
Come hang out in Vegas for a weekend, Tim. Come hang out for a week.
Yeah, let's talk about it. He certainly is another guy who's great to talk to about this.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing I'd really like to do with this is I'd like to get some of those. I'd like to get like Dave Friedman and Reinhold Bogner and stuff on this. Let's talk about tone. They've been interviewed a million times. We know the basics of stuff. But to be able to sit down and really talk to these guys and really get to the nitty-gritty of it would be awesome.
Revenge of the guitar nerds.
Yes. Guitar nerds. What it's all about, man. But that's tone is the reason we do it. The whole reason we have these conversations and they last as long as they do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anybody watching this is no different than me and him having a conversation on the phone.
Yep.
That's how ridiculous it goes. I know for sure that Jason's wife makes fun of him for it.
Yes.
She
calls Jeff my boyfriend.
Yeah. Because we will just go on and on and on about this sort of stuff because, it would love it. It's great. And I know that there's a lot of people out there who can relate to this and let us know, let's all get into this together and have a good time and share information.
Absolutely.
I'm always wide open to ideas and, what are you running and why do you like it? And what's something that maybe we missed in talking about a particular topic? That's what this is all about, is sharing information and getting connected with all the other tone junkies out there.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see it up there at the top, our Instagrams, our Facebook info. Hit us up. Leave some likes and comments and all that stuff down below. Subscribe. We'll do these. We'll probably get to start. We're gonna do one every couple weeks, and then maybe it'll turn into a weekly thing. I don't know. Schedules permitting, we'll see. We both tend to get pretty busy and crazy with stuff. So
yeah. Nonetheless, it will be as consistent as possible.
Yeah.
Because this is just fun, really fun.
Yeah. It's great. It's a great thing. Good time. And I really like the idea that now the conversation is open to everybody. It's really a cool thing.
Yeah.
I can't wait to read the comments and see what everybody says.
Yeah.
Talk about your influences. Talk about, like we did, first experience, your first guitar. That would be the first one. Let's hear about your first guitar.
Yeah.
Tell us what your first guitar is. No matter what it was. Even if you're like the luckiest son of a bitch in the world and your first guitar was a 59 Les Paul. I don't care. Just tell us.
Yeah,
let's talk about that.
Not only what was it, but how did you acquire it?
Oh yeah, that'd be cool too.
Yeah,
absolutely. And then tell us currently what's your favorite amp. Everything's valid. Everything. I don't care if it's modelers. I don't care if it's real tube amps. Just we're not here to judge you. We're here to talk about tone.
Yeah, and even if it is something that isn't a tube amp or something like that, because I'm a tube amp guy, as you are. If somebody's using something that isn't that, I would like to know what is it about that you like.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really appeal to me over a tube amp, but I'm interested in stuff like that. Yeah. Why do you like it? And share that with me. And then maybe in the future, if I'm in a position where I'm using something like that, I'll know how to deal with it and what I got to do to make it sound cool enough for me.
Yeah.
That's the way it works. We're all just sharing information.
That's it.
There's really no right or wrong. I think there's good and there's not good.
Yes.
That's really what it comes down to. And what it comes down to. But yeah. You know, it's all friendly. It's all guitar and tone love here.
It'll be friendly till we start reading the YouTube comments.
Yeah.
That's where we'll get crazy. We know how you guys are out there.
Hey man, how come you're wearing that T-shirt?
Because what the hell T-shirt is it?
What this?
Oh, it is a cool T-shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of a Vegas vibe, which is where we're coming to you from, by the way. Just some playing cards.
Live from Las Vegas, Nevada.
Yeah.
And I'm rocking the Architect shirt. Currently like my new favorite band. I'm loving these guys. They're like that newfangled, like I guess they're calling it gent metal kind of thing. But they're uber progressive and just the vocalist just kills.
Another genre.
Oh my God, another genre. Great band though. Seriously, great band. Love these guys. So check out Architects too. Killer band. But I think that'll do it for this episode.
It's been fun.
It's been awesome. It's
Episode
been
1.
Episode 1. But we'll be back soon with some more episodes for you guys to check out. And till then, we will catch you guys later. Peace.